Casting with Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week's guest is no stranger to the podcast, and in previous episodes we chatted about his passion for sea trout on the Welsh rivers. This week though, he tells how his season has been and talks of his fly tying, and especially about his new fly tying YouTube channel, which he launched last month, and explains what plans he has for it for the coming few months. He's also given away as a competition a Stillwater Fly Selection as a prize for Patreon members. I'll be giving more details to that for Patreon members and how to enter next week. So welcome to my chat once more with Alun Rees. Welcome back, Alun. Good to see you again.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Ceri. Let's see, it must be my fourth time on the podcast.
I think you're right, yeah. I'll be inviting you to the staff too next.
Oh, I tell you what, ever popular.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's almost 200 episodes ago because you were on the second one, actually the first guest.
Right, yeah.
So it's good to have you back. And it's good to have you in the studio once more after we've just been up to the local cafe and had a breakfast. And to be honest, boss, you should have had it after. Because after this big breakfast, I feel tired now.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'll be a food coma. So, food coma and a kip.
That's all we needed was compo, because I felt like it was like the last of the summer wine.
Yeah.
We've done it a few times now with the breakfast.
Oh, definitely.
We'll have to start a breakfast club.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A fishing one.
Although I think this one was a bit Mortimer and Whitehouse, although I didn't fall over.
Well, the season has flown, hasn't it? And how has it been for you?
So, started the beginning of the season in March on the Upper Usk. Although we had the sunshine, the prevailing wind was a real cold easterly wind. Fish didn't want to put their noses out, and it just kept everything cold for, I guess, first 3 months of the season.
It was.
So most of the fish I took were on nymphs. Didn't take a fish on a dry until May or June, and even then they were sporadic because of this easterly that was just kept prevailing. Really.
Yeah.
So
it was in the spring. We actually fished. The only time we fished together this year.
Well, that's right. We went up to Chatsworth House to meet up with Chris Haig and Bertie, his cousin.
Yeah, and Matthew Fletcher.
And Matthew, yeah, the gamekeeper.
It was a great trip, ours.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a jewel in the crown up there, isn't it? The Derwent.
It was cold, though, wasn't it?
Exactly. And that day we were like weebles wobbling around in all those clothing, in and out of the river, and it was a bit Baltic. But it's been like that most of the season. I had a reasonable start on the trout. A couple of trips up to Clywedog as well. But even Clywedog, that stayed cold. There was a blustery wind. 1 minute the fish were up, next minute they weren't. And even throughout the summer, you were catching fish on day sevens, whereas you'd expect them in the top layers. But very few methods that you'd expect to work in the summer. You really had to go down after the fish,
Oh, you went up to Clywedog, you were saying Clywedog last week, a week before.
Right.
And they must have been saving themselves to come up because there's fish everywhere on the top, yeah. You fished with a good friend of mine as well, didn't you? Up in Clywedog.
Yeah, Kevin Sheridan. Yeah.
Did you have a good day then?
Well, Kevin comes across regularly on holiday from Ireland,
yeah,
and he's a member of the Game Angling Instructors Association, as you might be aware.
You were the...
I'm head of assessors at the moment.
Right.
But I will be taking over as chairman in December.
Oh.
So, speaking to Kevin at the British Fly Fair last year, and he said he was coming over, and I said, oh, well, let me know, and I'll. If you want a boat partner, we'll book a boat. In total, I think we had maybe 30, 35 to the boat. But it doesn't really matter. What we had was a really good day. You know?
Yeah, it's a good water to teach people new methods, I find, because you can catch fish on everything from your dries, your bang, your nymphs, all the way down the layers, right to the deck, you know. It's probably the number one water in the country, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, so where else did you fish last year?
What else did I fish? Well, we've mentioned the Derwent. I went back up to the Derwent later in the summer to meet up with Chris to chat about some Euro nymph rod that Mackenzie are developing. And we had a good day on there. We were after grayling and brown trout, but we mostly got rainbows. Nothing on the dry fly again because of the cold easterly. And that was the middle of summer, and it was still Baltic. Look, I've had a couple of days on the Towie. Didn't do much of the sea trout because the water was up and it was just pushing through. I could go into the problems with the fish and the lack of fish coming back, but I think lots of rivers are suffering from that point. But I had one of about £4 the first time I went out. The next one I was out with a 2-hander, just playing around with a friend in the Nancaredig area, look. And I had a nice fish then again. And that's probably been it.
You're saying about Chatsworth. One thing I remember from that trip we went, we called it a day. We went up on the top of the beat, and I was going through these. I was following Bertie to this one stretch further up, and I wasn't really looking, was going, and I dropped about 5 foot into the water. Do you remember? You could hear me.
Yeah.
And luckily, I threw when I was going, I just threw the rod, and but luckily it was only about 18 inches deep.
Yeah.
So it was only my pride that hurt, really.
I heard a crash, and I thought, has he just broken something? Well, luckily it wasn't a bone, look. So,
yeah, but it was worth it. Because I had 2 fish after. Do you remember? They were around about £5 a piece, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
Quiet little spot that don't get fished. I think it pays then to make the most of your first couple of casts. So those fish just get spooked and they're gone. But luckily for me falling in didn't affect them. Like,
and the noticeable thing was that even though they were big fish, there was quite a push on that water. So you had a considerable fight on your hand when
those, great.
Oh yeah. Well.
So biggest rainbow I've caught on the river.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one after each other. The first one and the second, 2 of them were within the matter. There must have been a pair of them there, like, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
But something which happened the other day, I don't know if I told you, I had my hook stuck in my finger the other day.
Ooh.
Up in Rutland. I was tying a cast on for a guy who was with Dennis Williams. He's 91 years of age, so I was putting the cast on for him. And he gave me the fly, and I put it on, and I don't know how the line blowing the wind went round my arm, and I just, right, all done now then, and I just pulled my arm away, and it set the hook right in. The barb as well. Everything was in it, you know. Oh, and I thought, no. And it was a buzzard it was, and it was probably about a size 14. And I couldn't get a proper grip with pulling out. Anyway, I went to the lodge, and there's a girl at the lodge then. And I said, you only good at pulling hooks out? Oh, and she's, no. She said, don't even look at it. So we got this other angler then who was guiding there that day, actually. And he had the pliers, and he hooked the pliers around the bend of the hook. And he was barbed, see, as well, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, whoa, no. I said, you're going to use this press it down technique? And like, no, he said. So he put his pliers round. I said, look, give me time to prepare myself when you're going to do it. He said, right, I'll count to 3. You go 1, and on 2, you just yanked it. Oh, it did hurt, but it was out.
Is it still hurting now?
No.
No, I've had some, and I thought, that's not going to do too much damage. But weeks after, there's still a pain point in the fingertip, you know?
Oh, no.
So.
Well, I think the key was as well, looking back on it, you know, people say, oh, you got to pull it out the way you went in. And you think, well, yeah, that's common sense. But I understand what they mean now. Instead of just pulling it back, with the pliers, you curve it as you're pulling it.
Yeah.
You're twisting your wrist as well, you know?
Yeah.
So, I hope I don't have to do it again. But so you've had a few places you fished this year, probably more than last year, because I remember last year you were saying you didn't get out as much as you. Since you'd retired, you probably fished less.
Yeah.
But that brings the conversation to a saying which I've heard. There are some people who tie and some people who fish.
Right.
Now, in recent years, I guess you tie more than you fish.
Yes.
I know you'd
definitely.
like to get out more, but it's something which you spend a lot of time with.
Yeah, well, because of, I suppose over the last 15 years, the work I was involved in, it was quite demanding. 60, 70 hours a week wasn't uncommon. Travelling a lot as well, whether in the UK or abroad, just for work. It didn't leave a lot of time for family and fishing. So my fix was tying flies, basically. And I've tied flies since I was a youngster.
What do you get out of it?
Well,
What does tying? We're trying to get the emotion out of it. And people, I look back and when I was tying as a boy, and it was like, amazing. It's like everything, really. When you start something, you get the excitement and the buzz. Do you still get that enjoyment out of tying now?
Yeah, most definitely. The thing with tying is, it's a very personal thing. You know, my observations are translated into something that's on the hook. If you buy flies, you're only limited to what's available. And even then, if you go to like some of the flies I tie, people phone me up and say, I'm off up to Scotland. Can you do me some salmon flies? Well, I turn around to them and say, which beat, which river, which beat, and what time of year? Because I know quite a few of the gillies on many of the rivers. And I phone them up and they say, this time of year, at this height of water, these are the flies we use. Or in lower water, we use these. So I then create a bespoke box of flies for that individual to go to that river to fish that particular beat at that time of year. So for me, it's catering to what's required at that specific moment in time.
It's nice to collect certain materials and feathers, to have it all around you at hand.
Well, there's beauty in nature, isn't there? And, you know, we can't better nature, but we can utilize some of those materials to create something that will resemble what nature intends, really. If they then go to fool a fish...
It's so easy, accessible to get these things now, isn't it? Like when we started, obviously it was 1 or 2 mail order, but you couldn't see them. And you can access everything now, any different feathers and furs. But I bet you, I've been to your place and you've got every feather going. But I bet there's one bird you haven't got.
Go on.
And I have.
Go on.
Budgie.
No, I got some canary there. I got some pink parrot. I got some African parrot. But I haven't got any budgie.
Because when I started, I mentioned before, you were just getting feathers, fur, anything, any material to tie a fly, because usually that's all you could do then. And then we had me, my sister, yellow one and blue one, so I just used those feathers as well. Yeah. And my auntie kept peacocks, so I had no end of peacock feathers. So you just made the most of it. But
and you make a good point there now, right? Many of today's flies are real in-your-face items that never appear anywhere in nature. Nowadays, people tend to overcomplicate things. I mean, look at the jowlbark, right? There's nothing simpler than it's red cock hackle fibres and peacock herl. Nowadays, they've got different types of ribs, holographic, jungle cock, and you think, well, that simple fly used to catch fish.
And do you remember when we used to actually tie flies? I didn't have a bobbin holder even then.
No.
Peg.
Oh, you had a peg. I used to sit on mine. And my first vice was an engineering vice because I didn't have a fly tying vice. Yeah, I used to break some hooks because it was so big and I just squash them,
Something which I still do to this day from day one is I've never used a whip finishing tool.
Right.
I just use it by hand.
Yeah.
Because I find it just was convenient. without the tool, to be honest.
When it comes to tools now, there are lots of tools to do a lot of things. I think the finest tools are the fingers on the end of your hands.
Now, as we're on to the fly tying theme, I know for months now, probably about a year perhaps, is it? I've been chatting to you about it. You've been working on getting a YouTube channel up and running.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time coming, actually, because I did start a blog around about 2008, 2010, and I dabbled with video then. But once again, work, I didn't have the time, so I put it on the back burner. But luckily now, in the last couple of years, I've retired, I've cleared all the decks, and I've sat down and I thought, what do I want to do? And the YouTube channel was a natural progression of what I do. You know, I'm a coach or instructor, I guide, I tie flies to sell, not as many as I used to, mind you, but now my focus is on instead of me facilitating for many others, it's a time for me to do what I want to do. And the YouTube channel has come about really for a number of reasons, and I'll try to explain. So I support a number of clubs with their fly tying groups, purely because the fly tying groups, or fly tying in of itself, is sort of not as popular as it once used to be. People have more spare cash and they can buy flies, but hey, that's up to them. Times are changing now, so maybe fly tying will make a resurgence. But one of the clubs, Ogmore Angling Association, we gather on a Monday evening, and there's about 20 or 30 people there. In amongst those 20 or 30 people are a couple of youngsters, 3 guys, Stan, Callum and Harry. And 2 years ago, they wanted a trial for the Welsh youth team. Stan was the first guy, and we took him up to Clywedog, showed him a few things, gave him a few flies, and said, tie some of these up. And then Callum came along, and then Harry came along. All 3 trialled. Stan got in the first time, and the other 2 guys were reserves, but because people dropped out, they all qualified for the Welsh Youth International team last year. They've trialled this year, and all 3 are in to the Welsh youth team again. Now, because of other commitments on a Monday evening through the summer, I often can't make every Monday. So I wanted them to have a box of flies so that they could go anywhere in the country and catch fish. And the only way I could do it consistently was by doing a YouTube channel so that they could access it anytime. So with that, last winter I discussed it with them, and then I started planning January 2024. So I spent several months looking at the equipment, the platform, how I wanted to do it. And then in September, which was after their trial, I said, right, here's an opportunity now. You've got a winter of tying. I'll put the flies up. All you need to do is tie half a dozen each of these. And by February next year, you'll have a box of flies that you can go out and fish with. But it'll then be up to them to work out which flies that they want to stick with or what flies they don't want to stick with. So that they moved from a box of flies into a box of flies that catches fish for them, and they know when to use them and where to use them. So that's the whole idea behind it, is that...
I knew as well from knowing your character, a bit like me really, if you're doing something, you do it to the full degree.
Yeah.
And when I came over, and as I've been before, to your fly tying room, I can see now it's turned into like a full-blown recording studio almost, because you've got monitors everywhere as well. Obviously, you've got your lights and the cameras, and it would put the BBC to shame. In fact, that's one more thing they can be ashamed about, so nothing to worry about anyway.
It doesn't matter, no.
So you've invested quite a bit of time and money on your gear. You've even got a recording red light outside your,
That's
your
right.
door
Well,
on air.
Yeah, well, my wife works from home as well now, as quite a lot of people do, because, you know, you can access team meetings, you phone call, you can do it via the laptop or whatever. So when she's done and she walks past the tie-in room, she opens the door and goes, "Oh, yeah, do you want to Oh, I didn't realise you were recording." And it might be, you know, the last 30 seconds, and I think, no. Yeah, my youngest daughter got me one for a birthday present, saying,
I like
on
the
air,
idea of that. Yeah.
on air. So when it's on, the wife knows, don't come in.
I noticed then as well that the flight, you only just put it on a couple of weeks, about 3-4 weeks?
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, beginning of September, say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I noticed the patterns you put on. I've subscribed to it, so I get notifications that each couple of days you get a new pattern on. But they're all Stillwater flies. Now, you were known for your sea trout, and will you be doing sea trout flies?
Yeah. Well, as I said, with the youngsters, they are going up to the Lake of Menteith next year. So what I needed to do to support those youngsters is get them a range of patterns that they can catch fish on the surface, subsurface, mid-water and down deep. And I needed to get those out of the way for them to tie them before I move on to other things. So when I looked at it, doing this YouTube, you can become a slave to, I've got to put more videos up to get more likes, to get more views, to not really interested. You know, it's nice if people acknowledge it and say, hey, that's great work. But the whole idea for the channel is to provide information to those people that want it or need it, you know. So with those guys, I've got 50 odd patterns. Now, if I did one a week, it would be this time next year that I'd finish off showing them all the patterns that I feel they should have in their boxes. So I decided to put 3 a week up, but that's a bit too much because people have turned around and said, "Oh, hang on, we haven't tied the last one that you put up yet." Yeah. So as it happens, I'm putting up 2 a week, Stillwater flies, and it should be finished. That sequence should be finished by about February next year. So, you know, I've looked at the platform, looked at other YouTubers who tie flies as well, and there is a certain seasonal pattern to the flies that do get tied and that become popular at certain times of year. So, for example, this time of year now, quite a few people are putting videos up of perdigons, check nymphs, jighead nymphs, because we're coming into the
grilling.
Exactly. After Christmas, people will start putting up March brown patterns, hawthorn patterns, large dark olive patterns, because the spring is coming for river anglers, and those are the patterns that they'll be using. So I've kind of missed it this year because I really want to provide the information to the kids, but next year I'll pick up on it. So after these are done, I'll then be back onto a seasonal aspect where I'll be doing river trout flies. Then I'll be doing sea trout flies for the start of the season. Then it'll be sea trout flies for the summer, and then it'll be salmon flies for the back end, and then it'll be into grayling flies for the winter. And on and on and on it goes. I mean, you've been involved in Trout Fisherman magazine and latterly the Journal, and you understand at certain times of the year, out come the fry bashing flies, out come the winter nymphs, out come the beginning of the season flies, etc., etc. So that's what it'll settle down to. But I mean, it's not that I haven't tied those sea trout patterns, because I've tied the flies, I've got the videos there. I really don't want to overwhelm the audience. I'd really like to offer them something different, and if something of interest. And even if that means it's the videos are very wordy, because you need to convey the context. Why is this fly being used? Why have I tied it in this aspect? What water should it be used in? Why should I use it?
I've noticed on the ones you've done so far, you give a little bit of history to the fly as well, not just how to tie the fly.
Any modern fly tyer stands on the shoulders of giants. You've only got to... If you're a member of any of the traditional fully dressed salmon fly pages on Facebook or any social media, they are fanatical about Blacker, about Knox with his spay flies, and although they manipulate some of those, they try to adhere to the tenets that those guys dictated about the length of the wing and the combination of the wing. 3 strands of red, 3 strands of blue, 3 strands of yellow. Repeat. They acknowledge that those guys who tied those flies were masters of their art, and they're just trying to repeat it. Whereas, if we go into trout patterns, the only thing people want to know about is that the latest pattern? Will it catch me fish? They're not really interested in the history. But for me, if it wasn't for these guys that had started tying flies, Pritt with the North Country spiders, people are tying these spiders now and jazzing them up with a bit of pearl or a bit of flash. They should acknowledge that it was Pritt and the North Country guys that fished those in the first instance. Generally, people don't. They just want to know, will it catch me fish? But I'm all about acknowledging those people, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Well, I hope it takes off for you.
And I haven't advertised it because, like I say, one, it's taken a bit of time to get the videos up. I don't want to be in people's faces saying, hey, look at my YouTube channel. Wow, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. That's not really what I'm into. At the moment, it's more about the kids. So
just enjoying doing it.
Yeah. And if there's something that people disagree with...
What is the name of the channel?
Alun Rees Flyfishing.
I advise anyone to pop over to YouTube and have a look. Click that bell, as they say.
I haven't got a bell on it. No, I haven't got a bell on it. But listen, I'd welcome the subscription. And likewise, if there's any...
requests?
Yeah, requests. I've had a couple of requests and they'll be going up soon. Any tackle manufacturers are interested in, throwing any gear towards it, it'll end up with the kids. At the end of the day, those kids, even though there's 3, the Ogmo Club, there's others elsewhere. The youth fly fishing is really active. Yeah. They're the future of our sport. So, why wouldn't we support them?
Great job. Will you actually go out fishing now before the end of the year?
Yeah. I there's a couple of the rivers local to us, the Rumney, the Taff, the Iweni, all got grayling in them. I might venture because we've had a lot of rain lately, haven't we? Although the cold snap is going, if the water settles, then I might even go up to Mid Wales to the Irvon, or even the main stem of the Wye after the grayling. It'd be nice to get out. And
I'll join you there. That beat up by Dalwog.
Yeah, because and that's something I'm hoping to do with the channel, is that it's all very well tying flies, but people want to know, will they catch fish? Yeah. So if I can tie the flies, and during the summer months...
It's very time-consuming, isn't it? People see a little video, maybe 10 minutes long. They might think, that didn't take long to do. That probably took you all day.
Yeah, but and the surprising thing that I hadn't considered was that people consume social media at such a vast rate of megabytes. You wouldn't believe it. They're like, oh, what's next? And yet, as you say, you've got to prep the materials, you've got to tie the fly, you've got to check the video and the audio. If it's not good enough, you've got to do it again. Then you've got to edit it. Then you've got to publish it, check it, and wait. It can take a day, and yet people will watch it and consume it within 3 minutes and go, right, what else have you got? Yeah. And you're like,
Yeah.
Hang on.
But if you go into the line of going out fishing, that's a two-man job really. You can do it by yourself, but it's a lot of work. We'll do a day grailing together.
Yeah.
We'll film it to go along with on your channel.
Yeah, if here's the flies, let's go on fishing. Yeah. And then there you go. These are the flies we've tied, and you can see that they're catching fish. Well,
it was lovely chatting, and time for a cuppa now, I think, and hopefully we'll get out now in the next week or two, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again, Ceri.
Cheers, Alan.
Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you'll get weekly podcasts and access to over 190 episodes. Behind-the-scenes photography to go with each episode, plus other exclusive content and prizes. To become a Patreon, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or you can find the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. That's all for now. Tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.